So one of the interesting things that this book proposes is we tend to think of flow as a state, the state of mind, when really Csikszentmihalyi, apologies again for the pronunciation, it's quite a difficult last name to pronounce, we practice, is that we also have it within our control to create the conditions for flow. And that is as important, if not more important, than the state of flow itself. So it's far more complex than just a state of mind. And he starts the book talking about happiness and the roots of discontent. So just to open up a discussion, a few of the points he makes is that happiness is not something that just happens. It is not the result of good fortune or random change. It is not something that money can buy or power command. It is not dependent on outside events, but rather on how we interpret them. Happiness, in fact, is a condition that we must be prepared for, cultivated, and defended privately by each person. We cannot reach happiness by consciously searching for it. And the author quotes J.S. Mill, who said, "Ask yourself whether you are happy and you will cease to be so." So in flow, he talks about happiness as being fully involved in every aspect of our lives, whether good or bad, that we find happiness in that way of experiencing each moment, and not trying to look for happiness directly. So this idea of inner harmony, and being able to control consciousness itself as a gateway to happiness. What are your thoughts about, this view of reframing what some of us might think happiness is? That's not all happy, joy.
Yeah, but I like what was your quote from there is happiness is something that we need to plan for, right? We need to prepare for, and I think kind of ties with obviously the theme of the book, right? Is to have meaning in your life, and part of that is to get into flow activities more regularly, right? And flow, to be in flow in any activity is some of the conditions that components of it, right? To be you're in control, you have clear goals, you have feedback from what you're doing, and then you're constantly sort of improving on it, right? So all that stuff, if you think about it, right, every single thing in a day, you have planned out with your to-do list or whatever, and you can get into a flow state. Let's assume that. And part of that of being in flow state is that you're coming at the end of it is something that is enjoyable, right? The book talks about being, having pleasure and being enjoyable are two different things, right? And when you are enjoying certain things, in general, you're happy, you're right? And so imagine if you can string together a series of activities and you can go from one to another, right, throughout the day, and you're in flow, then I guess by that definition, you should be happy throughout the whole day, right? And but things doesn't happen randomly, right? Because you plan for it. Maybe the first thing you get up after you make a bed is to plan your day, right? And then you can just keep going one after another. And at the end of the day before you go, back to bed, is that wow, and I've accomplished a lot, and I'm happy throughout the whole day. So I think that's how I kind of look at it. Based on what you just talked about, Anjanette, is I truly believe I am in control of my life and how happy or unhappy I want it to for my own life. So
yeah, that's beautiful. When I think about happiness, I look at it through my lens, or through the lens of being a foreigner who's traveled into other societies, who's gone to other places, and to see, and some of the places I've been to are different than the United States or Canada, right? They're less developed parts of the world. However, people are extremely happy in some of these places, right? People are happy with the beach. People are happy with the sun. Or people are happy with having their basic needs met, and then having their family around them, right? And having the things that they need so that they can have their own happiness, right? So in my mind, there isn't one definition of happiness, but one thing that is pretty clear is that your basic needs should be met, or you should have the ability to provide for your basic needs, but money itself doesn't define happiness, right? Being loved defines happiness. Having people that you love around you, having a family, or having friends that you're close with, or being part of a community. For some people, it could be being respected by your community, or being respected by the people that you love. You have that sense of happiness because you're fulfilling. You're at the very least fulfilling your purpose that you have for yourself. It might even be, from a spiritual perspective, a higher purpose than yourself. So I say all of that to say happiness comes from different forms, not necessarily tied towards economics, but is more applicable to your environment and who you surround yourself with, and the energy that you receive from others can allow you to then be happy with your experience in yourself.
And I also think I think that the author, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, now that I'm getting the pronunciation, really was looking at it from a psychological perspective. He's a psychologist. And so I'm thinking of sustained happiness, because when I think of happiness, you think happy, happy, joy, joy. That there's this elevated sense of emotion that's attached to it. There's like something that's very gratifying. But I think that I've been trying to think now of happiness as an inner condition which can be sustained, where our nervous system is at some sort of peace, right? That it's not in stress mode, that there is some sort of contentment and serenity. And to be able to sustain that, I think there's a fragility when happiness or contentment or inner serenity is tied to something external that can be taken away. We each meet with difficulties and challenges in our lives, whether they're financial, the loss of a loved one, loss of a job, a myriad of different challenges that we experience in our life. And if our contentment is dependent on that, it can be really destructive to ourself and person. And perhaps it's thinking more, and what flow has enabled me to think is perhaps it's more, there's a momentary emotion. That there's nothing wrong with feeling sad or grief. But can we say, but I'm still happy from that sort of a macro sense? This is happening right now. It's been really challenging. You could have lost a job. But, if I bring myself back into my inner state, I can still say that I'm happy. Not that that's going to be easy. I think it's something that has to be practiced and cultivated. And I think it has to do with my reframing of it, that not to be defined by your experience. So I am not defined by feeling elated and happy in this moment. I can still say I'm happy, but I'm also facing a challenging moment. But the way I'm going to face that challenging moment is going to be a shift in mindset away from ruminating about, I don't feel happy right now, and how am I going to get happiness? I'm going to buy this car, or I'm going to, make a new friend, or I'm going to go off to Bali, and that's going to make me happy. Because in often case, that's very ephemeral. So for me, this idea of happiness has really been expanded.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's easy to think that way, because as humans, I think we like immediate gratification.
Well, let's tackle going to Bali, right? Why does going to Bali make you happy?
Right.
You mean, like, why is it making you happy?
Edwin, who has recently been to Bali.
but why does going to Bali make you happy, though? Is it because the environment itself? And like it's hard to be unhappy in Bali, first off, right? Because you have, but I think it's the people of Bali that make you, because they're happy, and so happiness is somewhat contagious, right? I mean, they're smiling, you know. While I was there on this last trip, it rained, and I was just like miserable, right? But then the guy was like, "Don't worry, 30 minutes of rain, 24 hours of sunshine," right? So he was like, "Yeah, we just got to get through this little bit of rain, and then boom." So, but it was like his outlook, his perspective, his environment. So what does like going to a place like Bali? Why does everybody walk away from going to a place like that, and they feel enriched? They have a new insight on life. Why do certain places change you?
I think that's interesting too, because even that mindset, coming across a person that has a different view of happiness, that why can't we be happy when it's thunderstorming? Why do we have to be defined by our experience? Oh, I'm wet and it's stormy and I want it to be. Maybe it's the idea of I want it to be that's going to derail us from happiness. And also I think, traveling, it gets us outside of ourselves. A lot of feelings of unhappiness happens during that rumination of, I don't want this. I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel this way. And then we start to become self-obsessed too about how we're feeling a certain way. And not to say that you might be in a challenging situation that is going to be very traumatic and that you do have to tend to self. But I do think that sometimes when you go away, you get outside of your experience and you experience other things. You're getting away from news. I think when I look at the news, I feel very unhappy. There's a lot of trauma that I tend to absorb as my trauma. You don't look at the news as much. You do look for positive experiences, like meeting new people, experiencing new things, eating different foods, enjoying the sunshine. And I think it's your focus is also, your mindset's different.
Yeah, well, in particular, I mean, okay, I have to challenge that a little bit. Is it true that everybody that goes to Bali will come back happy? I don't think so, right? But I have to say that everyone who chose to go to Bali will come back happy because they know, probably did some research on what Bali is like, what kind of type of vacation is provided there, and so they went there. I'm sure there are people who say, I don't want to go to Bali, I want to go to New York. Or I want to go to some other sort of tropical jungle and do my thing. I'll be happy there, right? So I think in general, I think is what you're saying, Anjanette, is that on a vacation, why is it in general people go on vacation, come back refreshed and happy, just to be away from the day-to-day and learn something, right? You try the local food there and say, wow, this is good. I never knew things can be like this tasty, for example, right? So in general, it's all in a different environment that kind of keeps you, your happiness level up there, and then you come back to reality, right? You say, oh, I'm so happy over there, and now I'm back, to the reality. So you have that comparison, and of course you say, yeah, how come I always feel happier when I'm like on vacation, right? But I think, I mean, again, vacation is something you plan, right? And so, this goes back to what we talked about earlier. Is like we plan our happiness, right? We know we need to work, and maybe we enjoy our work, and maybe not. Sometimes we are forced to do the things just because of making a living. But then we plan our vacations, something to look forward to, and hopefully we'll come back feeling happy and then back to work, right?
But interestingly enough in that, I think it's also important to find meaning or some way of feeling content and happy when you're not on vacation too, because I think that's where it becomes tough, right? And it's an act of privilege. So what if we are in 2023 and we're looking at economic uncertainty? What if vacations are taken away from us, and how can we find happiness? Does it require us something external to make us happy? And I think Flo talks about generating our own sense of contentment and reward. I guess it's rewards, right? Happiness is somehow connected to rewards, either someone loves us back, or we're getting a vacation or a raise, or we buy a product. But then, people are happy when they're among family and when they're among friends, and there's nothing wrong with that. That does generate great happiness. But when it's solely dependent on external things, what happens when family breaks up? Or, can you then reshift your idea of happiness? Can you have an internal happiness that's immutable, that never gets destroyed? And I think that's what he's talking about. To have that mindset is important to be in flow.
Exactly. And to have the sustained happiness or the enjoyment, right, that's basically be in flow as much as you can, right? So, yeah, I kind of like the book and how you kind of sort of tie that with the happiness in general. I think that's something that a lot of people are sort of seeking and asking, and is one of the topic that have most books written on, right? Different ways of finding happiness, right? And I think it is important that we know ourselves, and how can we plan so that we can stay in this happiness, mode for as much as we can go.
And what I found really jarring, if I can add, in this was the J.H. Holmes quote that, the universe is not hostile, nor is it friendly, it's indifferent. We kind of, we have this sort of attitude, I say, well, in the West, because I think when you think globally, I think that there's different conditions that then lead to different modes of thinking. But I think in the West generally, we think of the world as a good place. It's a just place. The world is just, it's good at its core. But it really is indifferent to humans because, environmentally, it would be good for some species of animals, probably not so good for us. So it's all sort of relative, and we tend to look at things from like an anthropocentric view of what it means to humanity, that the world should look at us favorably, and to shift to an idea that the world is indifferent, that the world might not be just, it just is. And that's something that, and not to embrace disappointment or negative thinking around that. You know what? It just is what it is. It is. You do you, and I'll do me, and we'll be good. But this essential thought of happiness is just to be. And sometimes that seems to me, when I say it, it seems so simple, so complex, and that happiness should render a different feeling. I think it's my expectations of happiness, and perhaps people's expectations of happiness that need to shift for flow to happen.
Hey guys, of course we are the M3 Collective. Please don't forget to like,
comment,
and subscribe.
By doing so, you'll receive notification when we drop new videos.